What would you do if you had to decide between winning today or preparing the car of tomorrow, knowing that you could lose everything? Ferrari already made that decision, and now the consequences are coming to light. The most controversial, ambitious, and potentially dangerous part of the SF26 is not its aerodynamics, nor its suspension, nor even its chassis. It's your heart, the engine. And more specifically, a decision that has divided the engineers in the paddock, surprised its rivals, and made even its own managers nervous. The use of a steel alloy cylinder head instead of the classic aluminum. At first glance, it might seem like a minor technical detail. But in the context of modern Formula One, and especially under the new 2026 regulations, this choice could mean the difference between being world champion or becoming the technical laughingstock of the grid. Why did Ferrari decide to abandon decades of tradition and rely on a heavier, denser, but also more resistant material? Because in theory, this decision unlocks hidden advantages that could redefine the way engines are built in the next generation. Steel offers much higher thermal resistance than aluminum. This means it can withstand more extreme combustion pressures and temperatures without warping, allowing the engine to run in a more aggressive range without compromising its integrity. Furthermore, this more stable thermal behavior opens the door to a more radical aerodynamic configuration. By being able to use smaller, more compact radiators thanks to the lower need for cooling, the SF26 can adopt a narrower rear, which in aerodynamic terms can mean less drag and greater straight-line efficiency. According to leaked internal calculations, this decision could grant up to 0.25 seconds per lap. In Formula One, that's an eternity. But not everything is virtues. The cost of this decision could be lethal. Steel, although stronger, is significantly heavier. Projections indicate that Ferrari's new engine by 2026 will weigh around 150 kilograms, 30 kilos more than the current version. This directly impacts the balance of the car, its center of gravity, and weight distribution. And under the new technical regulations, where energy management will be a decisive factor, any excess mass can completely break the logic of electrical consumption, deployment, and regeneration. Furthermore, there is a problem that has set off alarm bells within the technical department itself. Reliability is still not guaranteed. The most worrying thing is not that the engine has failed bench tests. What is worrying is that Ferrari has decided to go ahead with this solution despite not having confirmed its long-term mechanical stability. In other words, they are prioritizing power now and leaving the issue of reliability for later in the season. A very high-risk strategy in a Formula One where the margins are increasingly narrower and errors are paid for with points and with reputation. And here the human factor comes in. This innovation was driven by Davide Mazzoni, one of the most creative talents in Ferrari's engine division. However, his work began after the departure of two key figures, Wolf Zimmermann and Lars Schmidt, who left for Audi in a technical disbandment that still resonates in Maranello. Many consider this loss to be the true origin of the turn toward more radical solutions. Because when experience is lost, daring is resorted to. And that's exactly what Ferrari has done with this steel cylinder head. They have jumped into a technical pool without knowing how much water there is. To compensate for the lack of internal validation, Ferrari has turned to AVL, an Austrian engineering firm with a high reputation in simulation and engine testing. In addition, they have reinforced the team with Guido De Pola, a respected figure in the experimental development environment. But still, the reality is clear. Reliability is not yet under control. And that makes the SF26 engine not a strength, but a bet, a coin thrown into the air. And in the context of the 2026 regulation, where engines must operate with 100% sustainable fuels, where half of the power will come from the electrical system, and where efficiency will be almost more important than raw power, Ferrari is playing with fire. Because if this solution does not give results from the first moment, there will be no time to redesign. And worse still, it will be practically impossible to homologate a new unit under the development restrictions imposed by the FIA. What is presented today as engineering genius could tomorrow become the symbol of excessive technical arrogance. Ferrari is not playing traditional Formula One. It is trying to rewrite its rules from within the regulations. And if it fails, there will be no excuses. Because this decision was made with full knowledge of its consequences. And in a sport where perfection is the only acceptable standard, a single miscalculation can turn into a historic debacle. In Maranello, it is not only the time and technical complexity of the SF26 that is fighting. There is also a fight against a silent enemy, which from the shadows appears again with a disturbing force, Mercedes. And it is not just another competitive rival. It is the threat of a story that could repeat itself, with the same protagonists, The same script and the same devastating result that we saw in 2014. The general feeling in the paddock, especially among engineers and technical analysts, is that the Bricksworth structure has found something again. Something that gives them a structural advantage and that the rest are only beginning to understand. According to leaks and internal reports, the Mercedes power unit for 2026 is already reaching 420 kilowatts, a figure that not only exceeds Ferrari's estimated targets of between 400 and 405 kilowatts but also makes a difference of up to 30 horsepower. In the context of Formula One, this type of margin is not compensated by aerodynamics or driving. It is a structural gap. But even more alarming is the way in which that advantage is being achieved. Because Mercedes has not only built a powerful engine, it has built an engine legally camouflaged under one of the most intelligent and controversial solutions in recent times. Several specialized media have revealed details about a possible thermal manipulation of the combustion chamber. Basically, Mercedes would have designed internal engine components that, when heated during operation, change their geometric properties. In cold conditions such as those encountered during FIA inspections, the engine complies with the 16:1 compression ratio established by the regulations. But once on the track, upon reaching working temperatures, the internal walls of the chamber expand, altering the volume and generating a compression ratio equivalent to 18:1. This difference could mean an additional increase of between 10 and 15 horsepower, without breaking any rules. From Ferrari, the reaction has been one of bewilderment. One of its engineers expressed it bluntly before French media. They have come up with an intelligent solution. There is no accusation, there is no formal protest. Only the resignation of someone who admits having been surpassed in the laboratory before his car even rolls on the track. This is perhaps the clearest sign that Ferrari for now has no answer. And the worst thing is that he can't have it. Replicating an innovation of this caliber would require completely redesigning the architecture of the power unit. That is, starting from scratch. And in 2026, with the budgetary and development limitations imposed by the FIA, that is practically impossible. The only door of salvation that could be left open for Ferrari is called ADUO, additional development and upgrade opportunities. A system introduced by the FIA to prevent a single engine supplier from being completely left behind during this new technical era. This mechanism allows for extra hours on test benches, greater flexibility in the engine budget, and in some cases, the possibility of homologating a revised version of the engine after the start of the season. But depending on this type of external help is a clear sign of weakness. It's admitting that your engine is not up to the level of the competition. And Ferrari, historically proud and reluctant to make this type of concessions, is now faced with the dilemma of resorting to a tool that could publicly humiliate its ambition. Starting in 2026, the power unit will be split equally between the internal combustion engine (ICE) and the electrical system, completely eliminating the MGUH, one of the most complex and sophisticated elements of the current hybrid system. The new regulation establishes that 50% of the propulsion energy must come exclusively from the MGUK, the kinetic generator connected to the rear axle. This system will go from delivering 120 kilowatts to 350 kilowatts, which represents a jump of 192%. That's a daunting number in terms of thermal management, power delivery, and traction control. Ferrari, in particular, enters this scenario with a structural weakness. Its hybrid system, while powerful, has shown historical inconsistencies in terms of recovery and efficient deployment. If we add to that the problem of extra weight due to its new steel cylinder head and reliability still being developed, then the SF26 faces a perfect storm. A heavier car, more difficult to balance, and forced to operate within a technical environment that penalizes excesses and rewards surgical efficiency. In short, what comes in 2026 is not just an evolution. It is a regulatory minefield where every technical decision can translate into resounding success or total failure. The new rules have redefined the very concept of what it means to build a competitive car. And Ferrari, for all its ambition, is on the verge of discovering whether its revolution will be remembered as a masterpiece or as a warning to future generations of engineers. At this point in the analysis, the question stops being technical and becomes philosophical. Are we facing a misunderstood genius or facing a tragedy that we all saw coming except those who were building it? Ferrari has made a bet of historic proportions. The SF26 is not just a car. It is a declaration of principles. A technical manifesto that seeks to position the Scuderia as the absolute leader in a new era of Formula One. But the history of this sport is full of great ideas that, due to a small detail, became great failures. If the SF26 keeps its promises, We will be facing one of the most impressive comebacks in the modern history of F1. The absolute redemption of a Scuderia that has been searching for its place for more than a decade. But if it fails, it will become the emblem of a lost era, of a team that wanted to change the game, and ended up losing everything. And perhaps, in that outcome, we will find the definitive answer to the question that opens this block. Genius or tragedy foretold? Ferrari is about to show us, and the whole world will be watching. Let me know in the comments what you think about all this.